Hello everyone and welcome! In this video I'll be sharing my thoughts about the latest episode of The Walking Dead Warning Signs. As always with these reviews I won't be holding back on any spoilers, so please keep that in mind. If you're wondering why this review is much later than normal, it's because I've moved to a new house and I don't have any internet here until the 31st of October. So unfortunately that means that my review of episode 4 is also going to be affected as well. Sorry about that, but once the internet is sorted things will go back to normal on my channel. Anyway, that's enough about me, let's start the review. So if you've watched either of my two videos covering the last two episodes, you'll know that I've enjoyed the start to The Walking Dead's 9th season. And thankfully, I'm glad to say that the latest entry, Warning Signs, is another very good chapter of The Walking Dead. Note to self, don't read the next line. Of course, the reason behind my new positivity is because I've been paid off by AMC and Skybound. Ka-ching ching, give me the money, baby. Oh crap, I wasn't supposed to say that bit out loud. Whoops. Anyway, this was another engrossing episode which not only answered the burning questions raised during last week's cliffhanger ending, but also set up future events to come. I can genuinely say that at this moment in time I'm currently enjoying The Walking Dead the most I have since before the group arrived at Alexandria at the end of Season 5, and I'll get into explaining my reasons behind that in just a moment, but for now I need to talk about some things I didn't like, particularly the start of the episode. Once again, like the last entry, I found that things got off to a bit of a worrying start. The first 10 minutes were pretty much all about Rick, Michonne and Judith, with viewers being shown an abundance of picturesque scenes of them all playing happy families. Now there isn't anything inherently wrong with these types of scenes. In fact, you might remember how I actually mentioned during both my last two reviews that I liked the fact that finally Rick, Michonne and Judith looked like a genuine family unit. And to a certain extent this still applies. I mean, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to be moved at all in the slightest by the sight of Rick and Michonne playing hide and seek with little Judith. However, I just can't help but start to feel like these scenes of happy Rick are just simply a cheap ploy to make viewers feel upset about him leaving. Sadly, because the news about Andrew Lincoln departing broke before this season began, fans have known for a while now that Rick is going to exit the show in one way or another. And it seems that with every episode, the show is desperately trying to portray Rick as this happy family man, just to tug at the heartstrings of viewers who are worried that he's going to die. Case in point when Rick mentioned to Michonne that he wanted to have a child with her. Perhaps I'm being a bit critical here, but to me it seemed like this line was only thrown in just to irk a reaction from the worried Rick fans who are fearful of the potential prospect of him dying in a couple episodes' time, leaving a potentially pregnant Michonne to fend for herself. Perhaps I'd be more affected by Rick's reveal of wanting to start a family if this card hadn't already been played in the past. I mean, Glenn died when he and Maggie were expecting a child, Abe also bit the dust shortly after saying to Sasha that he wanted to have a kid with her, and of course Sasha followed him to the grave not long after. Like I said a moment ago, on one hand seeing these moments of Rick spending time with Michonne and Judith does feel like a nice overdue change of pace, because we haven't really seen much of this in the past. However, on the other hand, because we all know that Rick is going to leave soon, it all just feels a bit exploitative. Exploitative? Is that how you say it? I don't know. You know what I mean. And I know that's quite a strong word to use when describing a TV show, but I'm getting a similar vibe here to when Carl died last season. The Walking Dead's marketing team played on his impending death for as long as they could, and it feels like The Walking Dead is doing the same once again. Granted, Rick might not die, he might just go and disappear somewhere, but it's a bit of a coincidence that we are seeing all these playful, happy moments with Rick just before his character is about to leave the show. I believe these scenes would actually have more of an effect on a viewer if they didn't already know that Rick was leaving, because now every time I see Rick, Judith and Michonne together, it just feels like a cheap ploy to get viewers more upset about when he does say goodbye. I hope you understand the point I'm trying to make. It is kind of difficult for me to explain it, but it's just something about the way the show is presenting these scenes that doesn't feel right to me. That might just be me being me, of course, and you might not have a problem with it at all, but there you go. So that's the majority of my moaning out the way, as I found the rest of the episode to be much more enjoyable. Rick's happy family time comes to an end when he gets interrupted by the best character on the show, Scotty Boy.
Scotty Boy, Scotty Boy, Scotty Boy, Scotty Boy is the best Walking Dead character. He actually has a line of dialogue this episode. He is the best. Oh, Scotty Boy, Scotty Boy, you are the best. I love you, Scott, but not Scott Gimple. You're a prick.
It turns out that Justin, the saviour who was whacked at the end of last episode, was killed with his body being found by the saviours, causing a near full-blown riot to break out at the base camp. Thankfully, Tricky Ricky intervenes, arriving in just the nick of time on horseback. As Alden told Rick last week, Justin isn't the first saviour to go missing, with the saviours becoming fearful and paranoid about the prospect of being hunted down one by one. The Negan wannabe Jed then takes it upon himself to be the leader of this mini uprising, and he and the saviours called out Ann and Daryl as being the main suspects of who they believe could be the saviour killers. The episode then tries its best to convince viewers that either one of these two characters is the killer, which does work to a certain extent but also kinda doesn't. I'll start with my reasons behind why this approach didn't work first, with my main issue being that coming into the episode I didn't think that either Daryl or Ann were the ones behind all the saviour napping. I can honestly say that at no point did I think Daryl was sneaking around in bushes grabbing people in the middle of the night. Granted, he does hate the saviours with a passion. I mean, he brutally killed Fat Joe, he murdered a saviour who surrendered who Rick had given his word to, and he shot Morales without hesitation, but like he said to Rick this episode, it isn't his style to stealthily hunt down people after sundown like a ninja, which of course then just leaves Ann as the potential killer, someone who I just said I didn't think was involved with any of this before the episode aired. However, I have to admit that as the episode went on and as she became more suspicious in her actions, I did start to think that it might have been her all along, and this is where the show's decision to have Daryl and Ann as the prime suspects did actually work. See, part of me thinks that the writers purposely used Daryl and Ann as the prime two suspects because most people would dismiss Daryl immediately and then gravitate towards Ann. As the episode progresses, it becomes more and more likely that Ann could be the killer. Gabe mentions to her that he lied to Rick about being with her all night, and later she's seen talking on the radio to the helicopter group about kidnapping people, so case closed you might think. However, this is all just a very clever piece of misdirection, and it's revealed that Ann is caught up in something else entirely and it was actually Oceanside who were killing the saviours. I can honestly say that I didn't see this coming. I suppose the cynic in me could say, well, that's because Oceanside have hardly featured in the show, so of course you wouldn't expect them to be behind a murder mystery. However, I think the writers did do a decent job of making it an unexpected reveal, whilst also leading the viewers towards the path of pinpointing the finger at Ann. In the end, I think it all paid off, as I thought the conclusion to this episode was fantastic. To put it into some context for you, I'll briefly explain the situation. So Daryl and Maggie have just tracked down the Oceanside gang as they're about to execute the recently missing saviour Arat. Bee says that Arat murdered her husband, and Cindy says that she murdered her 12-year-old brother, all whilst wearing a smile whilst doing it. Arat, begging for her life, protests that she only did what Simon asked her to do, otherwise he would have killed her. She says that everyone has done bad things and that now she's part of Rick's larger group and deserves a second chance. To cut a long story short, Maggie and Daryl don't side with Arat, making a decision to leave her fate in the hands of Oceanside, choosing to walk away, and in doing so choosing to go against Rick's idea of putting criminals in prison instead of dishing out the death penalty. Now, just a warning here, there's a lot I want to talk about regarding this ending, so you might want to get yourself a drink and strap yourselves in. Ready? Okay, let's go. I'm well aware that The Walking Dead has more or less been asking the same question constantly since it began, regarding whether it's right or not for its characters to kill, and sometimes its approach to this subject has felt a bit lacking, especially during Morgan's dumb all life is precious phase. However, 9 seasons in, it finally feels that the show has taken a mature stance on the subject and is currently doing a very good job of presenting both sides of the argument. In fact, it's doing such a good job that even now, a couple of days after watching the episode, I still can't make my mind up if I agree with what Maggie and Daryl did or, well, what they didn't do. What I'm saying is I can certainly understand both points of view, whereas with Life is Precious Morgan, well, I just thought he was an idiot. For me, the choice to kill or not to kill Arat wasn't black and white. On one hand, I completely understand what Bee and Cindy are saying. This woman murdered their families, murdered their children in cold blood. Yeah, okay, maybe she did it because she feared for her life, but that doesn't explain why she killed kids with a smile on her face. And you know what, this all actually ties back in rather nicely to Negan killing Glenn and Abe, because despite all his attempts to appear reasonable during last season when he was telling Rick that he didn't take any pleasure from killing and that he just did it because he had to, blah blah blah, that's all just bullshit. I'm sorry, but whatever way you look at it, Negan had a great time killing Glenn and Abe. Just watch the episode again. He was smiling, joking, and almost having an orgasm over the sense of power he felt over Rick's group at that moment in time. Again, just look at when he killed Spencer. He did so whilst making a bloody pun, and then proceeded to make himself the centre of attention to the whole community. Negan might be sorry now, but at the time he enjoyed what he did, and so did Arat, and Maggie sees that. And that's the reason why I think she decides that her and Daryl need to kill Negan. She can't forget what he's done, and she doesn't think that she has to. Same way the Oceansiders can't forgive the Saviours, and I can understand that. I also like the fact that Cindy mentioned that Maggie killing Gregory was the catalyst for them to decide to start killing the Saviours, because it seemed like a sensible explanation for why they had suddenly started killing people 2 years after the war had ended. Although Maggie didn't kill Gregory with the intention of kick-starting a trend, it was kind of unavoidable that others would also seek the same justice that she gave out. I mean, I certainly don't think it's fair that Maggie can hang a man because he tried to kill her, yet others are expected to forgive those who killed their families and friends and live side by side with them. Unfortunately, Rick doesn't seem to see this. Of course, I understand why he advocates peace, but you can't realistically expect factions who fought against and killed one another to live in harmony with no problems whatsoever. However, that's not to say that there wasn't a part of me that did want Maggie and Daryl to intervene and prevent Arat from being killed. When being held at gunpoint, Arat told everyone that she was one of them now. She didn't identify as a saviour anymore, but instead a member of Rick's bigger community. I know that what she did to Cindy and Bee's families was absolutely disgusting, and if she did the same to me, I'd probably want to kill her as well. But there was just part of me that didn't think that what was happening was fair. A few years have passed since the war ended, with Rick offering everyone a clean slate if they can all work together. For all we know, Arat could have been a model citizen from the period the war ended up until her capture, so why now make her suffer for her past crimes? For all we know, she could have completely changed, and it doesn't seem right to me that she and everyone else were promised this second chance by Rick, only for the Oceansiders to say, you know what, screw Rick, screw the fact that she helped the community for the last 18 months, we are killing her now for what she's done in the past. It just doesn't feel right. If you want to punish people for their war crimes, then surely they should be tried immediately after the war ends, not this far into the future after they've had a glimpse of what life could be like. Also, if we are going down the path of killing everyone for their past atrocities, then arguably Rick and Daryl should be killed as well. Let's not forget Daryl killed a young lad who surrendered, and Rick shot men in the back who helped him escape. Arat said that everyone had done bad things previously, and that's true. Even the protagonists, the supposed good guys of the show, have done abhorrent things, so who has the right to cast the first stone at her? I know I've rattled on about this ending for quite some time, but it's one of those Walking Dead moments that will stick with me until the end of the programme. I was overwhelmed by a sense of disappointment when Daryl and Maggie turned a blind eye to Arat's death, yet there was also a part of me that was cheering on the girls who were about to kill her. I still don't know what, if any, side of the argument is the right side to be on in this situation, but I see this as a sign of the show presenting a moral dilemma in a fantastic manner. And for me, the quality of this ending helps overcome some of the episode's shortcomings. There's a lot of other things I haven't talked about that happened during this episode, but I don't want this video to go on forever, so I'll quickly go over some other points that I want to briefly cover now. Firstly, I like that Rick didn't kill Jed at the end of the episode. He managed to stick by his choice not to kill, even when it would have been easier just to shoot him in the head. I actually found myself feeling sorry for the saviours during this installment. They found themselves being hunted down, they didn't have any kind of protection, and they were doing the majority of the community's manual labour, so in my mind they have every right to be pissed off. And hopefully we can see more of Jed, as he seemed like a pretty interesting character. Secondly, seeing Anne revert back to her Jadis persona with the reveal that she was kidnapping people for whoever owns the helicopter was pretty cool. Just when it seemed like she might be the one killing the saviours, the show dropped a curveball by setting up another story arc entirely, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where poor old Gabe ends up at. Anne was seen assigning the people she is trading into either category A or B. For the record, I think category A is for people who are willing to go and perhaps even volunteer to be taken away, whereas B is for those who are taken against their will. This makes sense because at first Anne asks Gabe to come with her to the helicopter, and when he says no, she smacks him over the head and says that she hoped he'd been an A. And perhaps this group will play a role in Rick's exit. Maybe he trades himself to save Gabe, or maybe the fact that Judith was coughing means that she's ill and he has to trade himself to get some supplies for Judith. Who knows, but I'm intrigued to see where this all goes. Also, I have to say that I did like some of the throwbacks to past seasons that were found during this episode. Maggie was holding Herschel and Glenn's pocket watch when she was out with Daryl. Rick reminded Daryl how he spared him even though he'd just left his brother Mel to die. And Cole and Judith's handprints are seen on Rick's wall at the start of the episode. Angela Kang is definitely giving long-term viewers a healthy dose of fan service, which is a nice reward for those who have stuck through the show through its good times and its bad. And finally, I thought that Daryl Dixon did a fine impression of Christian Bale's Batman when he shouted "no guns" at the start of the episode. There is a lot of talk about Affleck leaving, so watch this space. This is a world exclusive on this channel. Norman Reedus is the new Batman. In conclusion, Warning Signs produced a satisfying and somewhat unexpected answer to who had been kidnapping the saviours, in addition to helping further drive a wedge between Rick and the other leaders in a way that did feel natural and believable. Sure, there were some missteps in parts of the dialogue, and the opening does feel a bit cheap when knowing that Rick isn't going to stick around for much longer, but the episode's ending was one of the most thought-provoking moments The Walking Dead has ever produced. In my mind, this is easily the best The Walking Dead has been since I started covering the show on my channel back at the start of Season 7, and I'm praying the rest of the season continues to be as good as it has been so far. So there you go, that's the end of the video. Please let me know your thoughts below. Did you like this episode? Did you think it was just okay, or did you think it was a bit shit? Again, I'm sorry that you've had to wait so long to see this review. Trust me, it's annoying me as much as it is annoying you. I didn't realise how much I had used the internet until I didn't have it, so hopefully, you know, next week it's sorted and things can go back to normal. Anyway, as always, a big thank you for watching, and until next time, goodbye.